call this my He Won't Stop Drumming story. This is again from teaching days back in like the 1990s. Um, again, well, I had for a few years there, some of the teachers on the second floor at the school as I would bring their kids to me that they're having problems with rather than to the principal or vice principal and have me uh, discipline them. And this is one of those stories. Um, I'm teaching, and all of a sudden in walks this teacher with a student, and she says he won't stop drumming on his desk, and she leaves, and she's ticked. And oh, actually, the kids were taking a test. I was sitting in the back of the class. My desk was back there, and I was sitting there grading tests, and the kids had their heads down. They're all taking a test. Ninth graders, like algebra, taking an algebra test that day. And the kids kind of like look up, and then they turn and look back at me like, what are you going to do, Miss Power? And I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do. It's always, a shot from the hip. And I don't do. They kind of looked at me, and the kid was kind of standing there, and I looked at him, and nothing was happening. They put their heads down and started taking their tests again, and I went back to grading tests and looking up and making sure kids are just looking at their papers. I mean, I was very strict about no. My definition of cheating is I thought you were cheating, and I'd walk over and write -20 on their test if I saw someone like, glancing, more than once at, like at someone's paper or staring at someone's paper. I'd definitely walk over and write -20 and just say, keep your eyes on your own paper. And I told them I would say it pretty loud. Everybody would hear, and it would never happen again because it would be that embarrassing. And um, my if I thought you were cheating, that's what I was going to do. And so don't do anything that would make me think that. Anyways, this kid standing there and he still got his drumsticks, by the way. And he's standing there, a little seventh grade boy, and there's one empty seat way in the back by me, and he kind of stands there and fidgets, and then everybody's great working on their test. I got my head down working, grading tests, and he walks to the center, and he walks down the aisle, and he's just getting ready to slide into the desk right by me, and I slam my hand down hard on my desk, and he starts, and I point to the front of the room, and he turns around and he walks back to the front of the room, and then I move him to the right, and I move him back, and he takes a couple steps, and then I go like this, and he moves over to the left, and then I move him forward towards me a couple steps, and I move him to the right, and the kids are just like, snickering and stuff. My students, they're watching me do the puppet master with this kid, and I don't know, for like 30 seconds, have him, and moving around, and he's obeying my hand motions, and he's moving, and I stop, and then I start grading tests, and the kids are waiting for something else to happen, and they wait just 5 seconds, and they put their heads down, and they start doing their tests, and I grade a couple tests, and I look up, and I slam my hand down again, and I go, you moved! And I move him to the left, and I move him back, and the kid starts snickering, and I move him to the right, and I move him forward towards me a little, and I move him to the left again, a few, 3 or 4 steps, and move him back, and I freeze him, and I start grading tests, and the kids put their heads down, they start working on their tests. And I grade a few tests, and then I look up and I go, "Can I trust you?" And he's like, "What?" I go, "Can I trust you to sit down and not drum on my desk?" He goes, "You can have my drumsticks." I go, "Okay." So he comes walking up, he hands me the drumsticks, and he sits down on the desk, and I set the drumsticks off to the side, and the kids, like are looking, waiting for me to do something, and nothing's happening, and they put their heads down and they start grading their tests, and I start, or taking their tests, and I start, grading tests again, and the period ends, and all the tests get turned in, and as the kid's walking out, or before he leaves, I hand him his drumsticks, and I say, "Why don't you put your drumsticks away every class, before every class?" And he's like, "Okay." And the next day, the teacher's in class, and man, he's starts drumming on his test, and the teacher goes, "Do you need to go to Mr. Power's room again?" And he just hands her the drumsticks, and he's like, "No, ma'am, I'm sorry." And he apologizes. And she said, his friend turns to him and goes, "Dude, what happened to you?" And she said, he told his friend, he looked at his friend and goes, "You do not want to go to Mr. Power's room." And so it was pretty funny. And it's just I had a reputation where the good kids loved me, and the kids who screwed around, kind of feared me a little, but they respected me. I saw the kid out in the hallway, and he's like, "Hi, Mr. Power," and he wasn't mad at me, but just the just a little bit of public humiliation. Just a little bit, just went a long way, and now, this idea of no fear. I don't think it's, I don't think it's that good. There's good to have respect for authority, and to admit when you're wrong. If you make a mistake, admit it, and and change your behavior. Respect yourself. Respect others. You're fearfully and wonderfully made. Respect yourself. Others, they're fearfully and wonderfully made. Respect them. So, anyways, he won't stop drumming story.